all the talk in this game was on Cristiano Ronaldo, obviously starting this game, the age that he was, if he was to score a goal here, what it would have meant. And in the end, it was 21-year-old Francisco Conceição who sealed the deal for Portugal. Tom Hamilton, your initial reaction to what we've just seen?
Well, look, it's the mark of a good team when you can manage to get across the line in these sorts of games. I mean, they were hammering away for most of the game against the Czech back line, but eventually they needed that little bit of luck. And we've seen that already in this tournament, teams where perhaps they head in as favourites, they head in as, you know, the better team, bigger names, etc. But they do struggle to break down the opposition. We saw it with the Netherlands, who needed Weghorst to score late. We saw it with Belgium yesterday, the match I was at, where they could have scored 11 times over, but just couldn't quite get that breakthrough. But today, Conceição, it was all about that endeavour, all about the bravery of him being in the right place at the right time. And for Portugal, that's key. 3 points off and running, as I said, yeah, mark of a good team, and getting those sort of early tournament nerves out of the way.
And showing the mentality as well there today, Bill, because it was all Portugal. And talk about a goal being scored against the run of play. When it came to Czechia, Portugal then just finding their way back into it and not dropping their heads, even when what they thought had been the go-ahead goal was ruled out for Cristiano Ronaldo being offside.
Yeah, I mean, you have the most creative lineup in the tournament, basically, when you're fielding a lineup with Cancelo and Fernandes and Vitinha and Silva. Any sort of transition opportunities, they looked great. It was just that Czechia, the one thing they're going to be able to do is kind of bunker in and limit your creativity. They just ran out of ideas there in a little bit in the second half. But once they got running again late in the match, they got things kind of open, a little messy a little bit, and then suddenly the opportunities started opening up. So yeah, you have that much creative talent, you're eventually going to find a breakthrough.
Sam, so we were waiting to see what we were going to get from Portugal, because when you talk about some of the favourites in this tournament and some of the standout names, just pre-tournament faves, we saw what we saw from Spain and Germany. England, obviously the jury's out after their opening game. Then we saw France's clash as well. And even on the ESPN FC TV show last night, everyone was like, let's wait to see what Portugal does, and then we'll decide what we think after these first round of games. What do you think Portugal have done here in that conversation?
Yeah, I think those 5 teams that you've mentioned are the teams that we're all watching, that we're all keeping our eye on. I agree with everything that's just been said. You know, the first games are really difficult, and the most important thing is to obviously win them, and then you can move from there. But I do agree with this idea as well that Portugal have so many creative players. I want to see a little bit more from them. I'm not sure. It's interesting because they do play a slightly different system, I guess, from the other teams, the way they played with sort of Nuno Mendes almost in a back three at times a lot, and Cancelo wing backs. And I just, I don't know if it's the best system for Bruno Fernandes and Bernardo Silva. Obviously, they're just so good for their clubs. You want to see a little bit more from them. It could just be a game, just be one game, and they could have great tournaments. But yeah, they got stuffed out a little bit, like was said in the second half. But yeah, I mean, to win the first game, coming from behind as well, will be such a confidence boost, and to do it as well after having that goal disallowed the Jota goal disallowed after the Ronaldo offside is also so massive, late goal and stuff. So it keeps them right in the conversation, and all those favourites have now come through those first games, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about Cristiano Ronaldo if we can, Bill, with you. Obviously getting the start here today, and we saw the involvement in that goal that wasn't in the end, but we saw him head wide early on. What did you make of his performance on the night?
Yeah, I mean, he created good opportunities. I guess that his best opportunity in the first half would have probably been offside had he actually scored it. But it did seem kind of interesting early on. They really seemed to try to get him involved and try to get the ball to his head. That really wasn't going to work against a really big defense. And so once they started kind of varying the script a little bit, I mean, number one, he had a good header there at the end. He obviously had the offside, just barely offside, that set up the goal as well. So yeah, it felt like they were focusing a little too much on him. Once they actually started spreading the ball around a little bit better, his opportunities started presenting themselves too a little bit.
Yeah, I suppose it's hard not to, isn't it, Tom, when you talk about Cristiano Ronaldo. Tonight, he equalled the record for the most consecutive Euro appearances, playing in all 18 of Portugal's games since 2008. In the quarterfinals, he draws level with Leonardo Bonucci of Italy in that. But what did you make of him today? And it is understandable, right, that we all just can't help but talk about him still, even now.
Yeah, and it was like the same with the build-up. You saw it with the way that the players were talking about it as well. Like, there were sort of questions from what you gather hinting at whether Ronaldo was actually the coach of the team instead of Martinez. Like the way that people like Ruben Diaz was asked, what's it like sort of tongue in cheek when your captain, when your main man is actually the manager. But look, it was really interesting. Even at the start of the game, when Portugal were preparing to kick off, by the time they actually kicked off, Ronaldo was already basically in the opposition penalty box. He'd already gone. The referee kind of waved at him and thought, you know what, crack on. And so Ronaldo had already sprinted halfway across the pitch before the game had started. And it kind of shows how much eagerness he had, and probably quite keen to show that he's still got it. I mean, there's a big debate at some point to be had about how we're seeing the levels of the players who've been in Saudi Arabia comparing to those in perhaps the top 5 leagues playing Champions League football. We've seen a couple of them struggle, perhaps. It's clear that Ronaldo was out to make a point today. He was eager as he always was, and he was there. And you can see that his mere presence, while perhaps he hasn't got the same pace perhaps that he has in the past, or perhaps the leaping ability, the fact he's there immediately draws away 2 defenders, creating more space. And as everyone said already, and Sam was pointing out, that it would have been great to have seen more of Bruno Fernandes and more of Bernardo Silva being given license to kind of do their thing with the space which was created, rather than, as Bill said, keeping kind of picking out the main man. I thought Leao probably struggled a little bit today. He didn't quite find his way into the game, but he's obviously an incredibly talented player. But when it is Ronaldo, when you have Ronaldo there, it is the Ronaldo show.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, Ronaldo, one of the youngest scorers in a Euro final tournament for Portugal. Renato Sanchez, the youngest at this point. But it is now Francisco Conceição, Sam, who's third on that list. And really nice is the fact that it's almost 24 years to the day after his father scored a hat-trick to ensure a victory against Germany at Euro 2000 that his strike proves decisive. We're going to be talking about young players this tournament because they've already given us reason to. And here's another name that we can add to the list.
Yeah, well, before we get onto the young players, because like you say, there's so many young players to talk about. I'm sure we'll talk about another one when we get onto the Turkey game, and we will come back to Conceição. But just a shout out for Pepe as well, because obviously lots of attention on Ronaldo at 39, but Pepe has today become the oldest player to ever feature in the European Championships. I've just got to check my notes here. 41 years and 113 days old. The record previously held by a goalkeeper, so he's broken the goalkeeper under, because it's kind of an outfield record with the sort of understanding that goalkeepers can play a bit longer. But he's taken the record from Gabor Kirai. And I think if it wasn't for Pepe, Ronaldo would have taken the record for an outfield player today. So remarkable, not just in the squad and playing, but actually starting those two guys is incredible. The amount of Euros they've been through and the longevity they've shown in their careers. But yeah, we are seeing a little bit more emphasis on the young players, aren't we? At this Euros? Perhaps that energy is, making a little bit of a difference. We'll see if it's just a fad as the tournament goes on. But yeah, 21-year-old today, like you say, for Portugal, Conceição. And yeah, a nice moment, that symmetry with the family history and whatnot. And, the goal meant so much, didn't it?
Have you got anything, Sam, that you think that could be a concern for Portugal as they go forward in this competition after today's game?
Only the same things, I guess, that you would probably look at about, perhaps the England game as well, specifically. You think, Spain were obviously quite good. France, I guess a lot will depend on Mbappe, but just a little bit about the creativity and stuff, what sort of level Ronaldo is at. Their players were all, apart from, I guess you've got the fullbacks, but apart from Leao, who Tom obviously touched on, didn't have his great game. It does feel like Leao is important to them because he's the one player. We've seen with lots of teams in the past when they've got so many creative players, they perhaps lack that little bit of directness and pace to beat a man and open up a game. So I think if Leao can find form, that could be important for them. But if he doesn't, then they're a little bit, perhaps they just lack a little bit of dynamism, perhaps in the final third.